Hey you guys, I've been thinking again, and if we're a professional adventuring group, shouldn't we have professional development goals?
Professional development? What kind of stupid...
Now hold on there, Mr. Ray of Sunshine. I think we should hear the barbarian out. Now, what exactly do you mean? Well, all we do is bounce from adventure to adventure, and we never get any time to pursue personal interests that in the long term could produce exponential gains as a team of adventurers.
Would you care to give some examples?
Well, for instance, you could research some custom spells, and the fighter could do some pit fighting, and the rogue could volunteer with the Church of Torm.
Well, this idea sucks. You all do your professional development. I'm out of here.
Actually, you will participate in professional development, or it will be reflected in your yearly performance evaluation.
Well, this sucks.
Welcome to the DM Lair. I'm Luke Hart, and I've been a Dungeon Master since high school. On this channel, I give practical Dungeon Master advice that you can implement at your game table. And today in the Lair, we'll be talking about downtime, specifically why you should consider integrating it into your games and how you can go about doing just that. But what is downtime exactly? It's essentially a game mechanic whereby the players are offered the opportunity to have their characters do something besides going on adventures. These activities take place between adventures and are often personal pursuits that benefit each character individually. Thus, they're usually pursued individually, that is, not as part of the adventuring group. Examples of downtime activities are listed in the player's handbook on page 187, which is a pretty pathetic and unhelpful list, and they are listed in Xanathar's Guide to Everything on page 127, which is actually fairly extensive and useful. They include things like researching spells, crafting items, religious service, and even engaging in crime.
Heck yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Now, before I jump into telling you why you should consider doing downtime in your games, I just want to let you know that you can watch the game sessions of my Sword Coast Guard group over on my second YouTube channel, the DM Lair Streams. This is the group that has heroes such as Nigel the Bard, Grist the min-maxed OP Bugbear Ranger Rogue, and Dalinor the, oh look at me, my armor class is 20 and I can cast shield, and the Dungeon Master was dumb enough to give me a Cloak of Displacement so I'm practically untouchable, Paladin Sorcerer. Oh, and just between you and me, Dalinor, I got something in the works for you. So yeah, link below if you want to watch a bunch of nerds play some D&D. Just bear in mind that we are not a D&D show. We are an actual D&D gaming group playing D&D. So if you're looking for the pinnacle of entertainment, you may want to look elsewhere. But if you want to see normal people playing a normal game of D&D, you might like it. And we have a guest appearance by Guapo, who wants you to let you know that, He doesn't like being on camera, apparently. He's bugging the crap out of me right now. Okay, so why downtime? Basically, downtime allows your players to pursue other things of interest to them than just delving into dungeons, kicking down doors, and murdering goblins, or whatever it is your groups happen to do when they are adventuring. For instance, the Sword Coast Guard is fighting to prevent Lord Paxton from conquering the entire Sword Coast with his army of orcs, giants, and other nasties. So, on one series of quests, they are working to break up an orc army. They TPK while doing that, but roll up new PCs and get her done. Next, they murder a bunch of hill giants. Then they sword a glacier full of ice giants. See this video right up here on how my players soloed an entire dungeon to hear that story. And then they move on to take out a volcano full of fire giants. However, during all of that fast-paced action and murdering lots of orcs and giants, lots of giants, mind you, don't you think my players' characters might want to do something else besides just rush from one dungeon to the next? I mean, that's a lot of murdering. They might need a breather, right? Maybe Robbie the Wizard wants to scribe some scrolls. Nigel the Bard wants to spend some quality time with his dear Lady Tharmer. Video on that right up here. Roku the Barbarian Druid might like to get in touch with nature and help further the Church of Craziness. Maybe Grist the min-maxed OP Bugbear Ranger Rogue would like to steal Dalinor's Cloak of Displacement and sell it on the black market. Sebastian the Turtle might like to go check in with Lord Paxton to work on his master plan of backstabbing the other players. And then of course we have Dalinor the Paladin Sorcerer. Surely he has individual goals and aspirations he'd like to pursue. But you know what? I couldn't care less about Dalinor. No downtime for him. You see, Downtime gives your players the chance to do all of those cool things that they can't do when they are busy saving the world. So my suggestion is that you definitely should offer it as an option to your players. Now, some players may not care so much for it, but others definitely will. Online versus offline downtime. Okay, cool. So we just have the group take a break between adventures to roleplay the downtime activities at the game table, right? Well, now, hold on there a second, Skippy. It's actually very important to consider how you implement downtime for your group. There are basically two ways to do it: at the game table and away from the game table, which I refer to as offline. I'm going to discuss both methods, including advantages and disadvantages of each, and finally, I'll give my personal recommendation. That's right, I'm going to give you actual reasons. I'm not just going to say, this is how I do it, and I think it's the best way to do it, therefore you should do it this way too. Still have cat hair on myself. I blame this on Guapo. My video has cat hair in it now because of Guapo. First, doing it at the game table means taking 30 minutes to an hour or longer to go around the table, figure out what everyone wants to do for their downtime, and then resolve it. This is the way I was doing it for years with my Sword Coast Guard group, and I found there to be two main advantages to it. The first advantage of doing it this way is that everyone gets their turn, and you ensure that downtime is completed. You see, you have a captive audience. Players' butts are in their seats, and you just get her done. Now, let's contrast that with doing things by email or in a Discord server you set up for the game. I don't know about you, but I have several players who never respond to jack via email. If something isn't discussed at the game table, it might never get discussed. So that's the risk you might run if you do downtime offline. The second advantage is that sometimes a player's downtime activity will impact the very next adventure they'll go on. So it's important to do it right away. What I mean is that if downtime falls in the middle of a session and not neatly at the very end, and if you do downtime offline, the group might actually start the next adventure before resolving the downtime activities. Now, in the case of something like engaging in crime or performing faction service, resolving it later might not be a big deal. But if Robbie the Wizard wanted to create scrolls and potions to use in the next adventure, or Nigel the Bard wanted to go to New Olam's Bard College to research information about the enemy lieutenant they are about to face off against, then not doing downtime before the next adventure might be a problem. This is where resolving downtime during the game session really shines. You can make sure that all of the important stuff is done right then before the adventure starts. However, if you are running downtime offline and cases like this spring up, you can always just resolve the important downtime activities right then and save the less important downtime pursuits for outside of the game session. And now for disadvantages of running downtime during the game session, of which I have found there to be 3. The first one is that it can be boring for the players. You see, one player's downtime is all of the other players' moment of having nothing to do in the game. So that means while you are resolving Robbie the Wizard's downtime, and holy crap, does that take some time because he wants to debate everything, Nigel the Bard, Grist the min-maxed OP Hobgoblin Ranger Rogue, Roku the insane Halfling Barbarian Druid, and Dalinor the Fancy Cloak Paladin are all bored out of their minds. And each player has to sit their happy butt right there and pretty much do nothing while you resolve all of the other players' downtime activities. Now, sure, they will spend some of that time deciding what they want to do during their downtime, but that's usually not a decision that takes more than a few minutes. Second disadvantage of downtime at the table. Because players are put on the spot a little bit, and when I do downtime this way, I'm looking to resolve downtime as quickly as possible, their creativity may be affected. That is, there may be another thing they would have preferred to do if they had been given more time to mull it over outside of the game. And they could have come up with something really cool to pursue as part of their downtime, but they had to pick quickly so as not to bog the game down with indecision. The third disadvantage is that because downtime doesn't come up very often in the game, maybe every 2 months or so, the downtime rules in the DMG and Xanathars or Acquisitions Incorporated don't get used very often, and that means everyone forgets them. Which then means you spend lots of time at the table looking them up and reading them before you can actually resolve the downtime activities. which means things take that much longer and are that much more boring for the players. And I don't know about you, but my ability to process rules, especially complex ones, plummets when I'm actively DMing. Like, away from the table, I'm good, but at the table, under pressure, sometimes my brain is like, nope, not gonna do this right now. However, if you were doing downtime offline, then there is no pressure to figure out the rules. You can look them up at your leisure because you aren't holding the game up. Now let's look at the pros and cons of doing downtime away from the game table between game sessions, which I've been referring to as offline. The number one advantage, in my opinion, is that it's less boring for the players because the game isn't being held up waiting for others' turns resolving downtime. In fact, it should be exciting for players because they can take their time offline to do their downtime. This means the player and the Dungeon Master can delve into more details and have something really cool happen as a result. This is the second advantage of doing downtime offline. I mean, if Nigel the Bard, say, wanted to conspire with Lady Nellaby Tharmer to create a demonic army of Cambion offspring that would someday threaten Waterdeep itself, well, working out those details offline with the Dungeon Master would be the best way to do it. That way, all of the other players are unaware of what's going on, and they are taken completely unaware when in a later game session, a devilish army led by Nigel and his love, Lady Nellaby Tharmer, actually a succubus who was promoted to a pit fiend, by the way, attack Waterdeep. Unless, of course, my players are watching this video, which they should not be doing. The third advantage of downtime offline is that players can participate or not as desired. It's entirely possible that you may have players who don't give a flying crap about downtime and would rather just skip it. Doing it offline makes it easier for them to just opt out. Oh, and by the way, Dungeon Masters, it's okay if a player doesn't enjoy and engage with every part of your game, including downtime. All players have different interests and different things that are fun for them. This is okay. Don't force it. Now, the main disadvantage of doing downtime offline, and this is a pretty big one in my opinion, is that it eats up more of the Dungeon Master's time. I think we all know, or at least we should, that many DMs spend a metric crap ton of time preparing for and running their games. So spending even more time offline resolving downtime out of the game session puts more of a time burden on them. Now, I imagine that many Dungeon Masters who have the extra time, this isn't a big deal for them. However, if you struggle to even prepare your game sessions because of how busy your life is, which is where I'm currently sitting too, by the way, then I would think carefully about this. You might just not have the time to take downtime offline. Obviously, whether you do downtime during the game session or offline is a personal decision for each Dungeon Master to make. But what's my personal recommendation? I would definitely try it both ways to see which one works better for your group. But ultimately, I do feel that doing downtime offline might be the better way to go. Let me know how you usually do downtime for your groups and why. Next week, we'll talk about how to reward magic items to your players. But until then, click right here to binge on my Dungeon Mastering 101 playlist. And until next time, let's play D&D.